do teach this retreat in Barrie every winter. In February, an intensive loving kindness retreat for 7 days. And one year at that retreat, I was giving a talk on sympathetic joy, having joy in the happiness of others instead of falling into all of this jealousy. And I just used this example, honestly, just off the top of my head. I said, it's like it's Sunday in New York City, and you buy the New York Times, and you open to the book review section, and you open to the bestseller list, and you think, ooh, my friend's book got on the New York Times bestseller list. Like, what a pity. It should have been my book. And somehow, if it hadn't been their book, it would have been my book. They stole it from me. And by the oddest of circumstances, I had 3 friends sitting at retreat, each of whom had had books on the New York Times bestseller list. And they each came up to me after the talk and said, is that how you felt? When you saw my book was on the New York Times bestseller list? And I said, no. Of course not. Never. So some way, I mean, it just shows you, right, that we can be so caught. And it's so weird. It wasn't like the New York Times was heading to my house and they diverted them like the guy, you know, my friend with the glove. It had nothing to do with me. But we take it all so personally. You took something from me. So in a way, I can't personally understand my last book, Real Happiness, was on the New York Times bestseller list for a week. Yes, thank you. So, soon after I left here, actually, I went back east and... We did it. You did it. You guys did it. Thank you so much. Thank you. So the way that I found out was when I started my book tour, some things got canceled because of snow. Look, I was already in Philadelphia and the thing got canceled, so I went back to New York. And so I was doing kind of makeup things at the end, like Baltimore and Philadelphia, places I'd been snowed out. So I was back in Philadelphia. And it was a book evening, but it was a benefit for this organization. The university there had a program on cancer and mindfulness. And I did the talk, and then I went back to my room, and I had my iPhone with me, and I turned on my iPhone, and there were like 50 emails from my publisher. And what happens is, apparently, someone in the publishing houses, you know, stays up late, because you get advance lists for like 2 weeks hence, or a week hence, or something like that. And they write down all the titles from that publishing house that are on the New York Times bestseller list from all the different categories, you know, paperback this and hardcover that and whatever. So all these people were forwarding that email to me. Now this particular publishing house also published What to Expect When You're Expecting, soon to be a movie, like this week, I think, something like that. Anyway, so that's been on the New York Times bestseller list for like 700 weeks or something like that. So that's just what it said. It said, like, what to expect when you're expecting, 700 weeks. Real happiness, 1 week. So I looked at it and I thought, okay, what's the standard now? Should I feel bad that it's only been 1 week? Or should I feel so happy that it's been a week, right? But that's what I mean. It's like, it's the power of our own minds. Even when something great happens for us, we have the capacity to quickly define it as not enough. But we don't have to, right? If we can have some perspective on things, which is wisdom. Like, woo, this is great. This is kind of incredible. I didn't write a pregnancy manual. I wrote a meditation book. Right? So every place we can bring in wisdom will bring in happiness. And that happiness will allow us to actually expand our sense of life. Instead of feeling attachment instead of loving kindness, despair or overwhelm instead of compassion, instead of having that kind of very narrow sense of sympathetic joy for those few we might consider to be on our team, our side. We can actually loosen the grip of that kind of jealousy and comparing and competition, which only causes us to suffer. Not only in hard times, but even in good times, it causes us to suffer. We can have a much bigger sense of life and our joy and our happiness. That's the power of equanimity. So equanimity as a state has its own near and far enemy. The far enemy is reactivity. I should do it for sympathetic joy too, I realize. So the far enemy of sympathetic joy is jealousy. The near enemy I've seen described in different ways. The way I describe it, the way I like it the best in terms of a description is comparing, which in the Buddhist psychology, the state of comparing is considered a source of suffering, whatever conclusion we draw. It's just that kind of restlessness of like always looking. So it's got some things similar to sympathetic joy, and then in sympathetic joy, we're looking at someone else's situation, but not to decide who we are, but to be happy for them. Whereas in comparing, it said whether we look at somebody and decide we're better than, equal to, or less than they are, it's still a source of suffering, because it's that endless kind of restless looking. Okay, so on to equanimity. The far enemy is reactivity. It's attachment and aversion. Holding on, pushing away. Holding on, pushing away. The near enemy, that state that could easily be confused for it, but is really very, very different, is indifference. Equanimity does not mean indifference, but we can easily get confused. It's not that we don't care. It's not that we're pushing away in that subtle sort of fashion. It's that we have a spacious balance based on wisdom, on seeing more clearly. It's all the ways that wisdom gives us perspective. This may not happen by the end of the week. That could be okay. It's still important to do. I may not convince that person to change in some way. That's okay. I'm going to say what I have to say and let go. I may not see the results of this, but it's still the right thing to do. I'm going to have boundaries in terms of my action. Not out of selfishness, but out of seeing the need for balance. There are all kinds of ways that equanimity might manifest. They actually use the word boundaries as a translation from the text. Like a parent whose child is now an adult. It doesn't mean you don't care. But how is our own well-being defined? And what do we have to give if we're caught in some other way? So equanimity is a really crucial part of all of these other practices, often unnamed or just implicit in what we're doing. What I'd like us to do actually is to go out and do some loving kindness practice walking, or just being out, and then come back in and sit. And for you all to feel that dimension of equanimity that's in there as we move from, may you be happy by tonight, to may be happy. So I'm going to go back to that other model for a few moments before we do the walking practice. Say out of a beautiful motive, I decide I want to give someone this box of raisins. The next stage in that action is a kind of mindful consideration in a bigger way. It's like I look at context. I look at this moment in time. Maybe I think, well, you know what? I only have one box of raisins. Maybe this is the kind of thing best done privately. Maybe I should try to take you aside and do it here. What seems to be the most skillful way to say this? Do I want to offer the box of raisins now or later? You know, and it doesn't have to be very heady. It's our feeling into what seems to be the most skillful action in this moment, in this context, right now. That's why it's very hard when people ask certain kinds of questions, because there's no formula. You know, it really depends on what we see, what we sense. I sometimes call it our best guess about the most appropriate thing to do or say. So for example, one problem we have is that we mix up those two levels, the motivation and what we might call the skillfulness of the execution. And when we mix them up, when we conflate them, then that's the place where people say, well, I don't know about this loving kindness thing, because were I to be coming from a loving place, I could only say yes, smile, let them move into my apartment, give away all my raisins, right? And that is a fearful prospect, you know, that our worlds would get much smaller and our action much more limited. Whereas we know that you can genuinely be coming from a loving, compassionate place, and your best guess of the most appropriate thing to do in this moment in time is pretty fierce. It's saying no. It's hiding your raisins. It's not letting them move into your apartment. Right? Those are two different arenas, you could say, and they each demand mindfulness and awareness, but in a somewhat different way. Mindfulness of our motivation compared to mindfulness of the context. Okay, so then the third arena or aspect of action could be called the immediate result of the action. First of all, in terms of praise or blame. You know, I have a genuinely generous motive for offering you this box of raisins. I'm really sensitive. I'm quite aware there's only one box of raisins. Maybe I should do this privately. Maybe whatever. And you know, I get it all together, and you walk in the door, and I hand you the box of raisins, and you know, that's a place where during lunch, maybe you know, checked your text messages and you saw you just won $10 million in the lottery, and it's like, you could not care less about this box of raisins, right? And you kind of smile a little bit, but you don't seem all that compelled by it, and you walk away, and I'm devastated, right? How often in that moment do we stop and think, maybe they have a lot going on? You know, maybe they got bad news during lunch. That's not so common. It's not so common that we look back at our motivation and the skillfulness of our action as the terrain of our learning, and also our source of happiness. More often we think, I'm an idiot. The box was too small. Why did I give them the box of raisins? That was so stupid. I should have given them M&Ms. I didn't know anyone ate M&Ms anymore, but they must, you know, that must be it. And, you know, oh no, I always give the wrong thing. I'm like a bad gift giver, right? That's more common. So instead of realizing that we are putting our whole sense of who we are and our happiness on something we can never control, because there's always praise and blame in this world, right? And so there will never be the perfect gift that 100% of who we offer it to will receive it in the way we want it to be received. Because you can't really say to somebody, okay, when you come back from lunch at 2 o'clock, something's going to happen. I want you not, especially these days, I don't want you to check your email. Don't check your text messages. Don't check your voicemail. Don't have a conversation with anybody. And don't think about anything. No memories, no plans, nothing. I need you to arrive back in the room at 2 o'clock as a completely blank slate. It's not going to happen. So there's always praise and blame in this world. That's where we need equanimity. Again. We give from the best motive we can with as much skill as we can, and we need to let go. Let go doesn't mean, you know, throw it away and not care or pretend we don't care, but instead to be coming from a place of more wisdom, more balance, to remember, I did the best I could, or not. There's always blame in this world. Things like that. So together, these all work so that we can actually live our intention toward greater loving kindness and compassion. Okay, the walking practice. Again, if you don't care to walk, that's fine. The idea is some period that's not, you know, so kind of contained or inner, eyes open. Let's say you are walking, please walk at a normal pace. And instead of, as we did this morning, resting our attention lightly on sensations of movement, I would suggest that you rest your attention lightly on some phrases of loving kindness, which I'll describe. These are silent repetitions of these phrases. I usually try to emphasize that because I was in Berkeley once, teaching in a yoga center, so we did all our walking out in the streets, and either I had not been clear or someone got confused because she came back in and she said, well, I walked up to this group of people on the street corner and I said, may you be happy. And I thought, well, at least it's Berkeley. So, eyes open, silent repetition of certain phrases. Light awareness, resting on the phrases so you can still be aware of everything going on around you. If you're walking, just walk at a normal pace. Okay, so the phrases, there are many, many variations, many ways of doing this. This is the way I like to do it the most, so that's what I'm going to offer to you. I like to do the walking and loving kindness, basically repeating the phrases for myself. And you can choose 2 or 3 phrases that mean something to you, like, may I be happy, may I be peaceful. The may I is sometimes confusing for people, bless you. It doesn't mean begging or pleading, as my friend Sylvia Borstein once described it. She said it's like you hand someone a birthday card and you say, may you have a happy birthday, may you have a great new year. You know, so it's like a feeling tone of offering, of giving, of blessing. even towards yourself. So let's say it's those phrases. You're walking, resting your attention lightly on the repetition, may I be happy, may I be peaceful. May I be happy, may I be peaceful. And then someone comes strongly into your consciousness. You see a person coming by. You hear a bird. You hear a dog. You see a bug. Just quickly include them like, oh, be happy. And then come back to offering the phrases for yourself. As I said yesterday, there's a lot of life out there, so you can really like get very jumbled, like, oh, be happy, be happy, be happy, be happy. Which is why I like to have that basic baseline of the phrases for myself. And then just play, include, okay? So have fun. Please use this as a time of practice. We'll take half an hour. If you come back just after 3:30, that would be great.